See. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. Welcome in. Need this. Tom. So early? It's not that early. We'll see. You like it. All right, that's a good sign. I definitely see that you like it. I mean, it definitely gives you everyone an idea of what I'm potentially looking at and gives you a little more time to actually go back and later on look at different charts other than just the ones I'm looking at, or maybe plan it out your way, all based off of what I'm pretty much looking at. So I do like that idea. What's going on, Sig? I just like the idea of pretty much doing it a little earlier. It definitely gives everyone a better, pretty much game plan. Gives you more time to game plan going into tomorrow morning. Definitely was quite the day, I will say that. Dapper, how's it going, Dapper? I heard you had just a nice little dapper day. How did that little lotto go for you guys? Was it Pow? I think it was. What's going on, Yunjio? Did I say that right? Sig, not a mod. What's going on, guys? All right, so today was definitely just a nice little, felt like a range day. I know that we had that nice little candle pop today. If I actually pretty much just go in, those of you that maybe just missed today's price action, I will say you didn't miss quite much. Today was just felt like pretty much just a range day, a lot of sideways action. The only thing that I think was the highlight of today was pretty much that little what a point and a half candle on SPY, in which you just heard Dapper saying, "Wow, wow, wow," and that was just literally the highlight of the day. That's literally what it felt like. So I do think that there's a bigger move that's pretty much brewing in the pipeline here. It just was not starting out this way. I will say though that pre-market price action this morning was definitely wild. I think for those of you that were holding puts or calls over the weekend and you looked at price action this morning around just when Valor was pretty much talking, uh, you just saw that price action you literally just go whipsaw from red to green and back to red. So I can imagine if I was actually holding a position, that would literally just be terrifying. So I literally would just have a heart attack right there, and just you saw wake up, you see futures down, as much as it was. I think Tom was holding just a bit of puts, but and then next thing you know, you just see CNBC just pumping up the market, and then we go right back down. So I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, today's gonna be a wild day, but it did not end up turning out to be the case. But just big picture wise, in terms of ranges on what I'm looking at, obviously you see what we would consider maybe like a double top formation here off of SPY is what I was looking at. I'm looking to see where we end up hitting our support zone is really what I'm looking at. In terms of today potentially being that support zone at that 437 mark was really what I was looking at. 437.40 mark is really what I was looking at in terms of holding there, in which we will retest the neckline of this double top formation. Otherwise, now tomorrow is I want to see, all right, if we do get more blood to the downside, where do we end up finding support off of this? What I would say is a double top formation. I know that if you also read the newsletter, Avery also had his own outline as well, which kind of coincides with what my upside target was. He was looking for us to retest 445.50. And as you see, this little blue line here towards the neckline of the double top formation actually is that zone in which I'm expecting to get our push up to the upside. It's just a matter of finding the support level in which whether that's going to end up coming here around this 439 mark, or do we end up seeing a little bit more downside before we get that retest towards the neckline. All right. So that's pretty much just the bottom line in terms of formation. What we're looking at, upside will be 445 to retest the neckline. Otherwise, I want to see this 439 hold here overnight. Otherwise, I think we can see a nice little drop off here towards 432 to 431, in which I would potentially want to see if that holds as our support to get a nice little bounce here. A lot of activities going on this week. We do have the OPEX this week. It's just what actually is more worrisome, and especially holding positions overnight, it's just the sporadic news that we're getting, especially with this Russia Ukraine stuff. We're getting so much sporadic news. Has it's just been crazy. Oh, Sig has mod powers. Actually, very nice. I like it. But that's the scary part about holding positions overnight. And you've heard me pretty much saying that for quite a few days, maybe weeks, is that just be careful with what you're swinging overnight. And that's really what I'm more so worried is because I don't want you to get your positions wiped out overnight. especially with you see how sporadic these movements are overnight. I know Nasdaq could be up 200 points, down 200 points within a blink of an eye, and that's the tough part about just swinging positions overnight. And so I know that maybe Sig is maybe a little bit light over tonight. He could probably attest to that, but pretty much just more so this day trading, taking what the market is giving us right now and just playing exactly how the market is just trending. You know, you see the guys just pretty much trying to find a trend, trying to look at ad, look at Volt, look at Tick, trying to find a trend in the day and just scalping and day trading for that matter. Not necessarily for me personally, it's just holding large positions overnight. That's pretty much going to end up hitting you in a whipsaw one particular night, and it likely may end up being just some sporadic kind of news. All right. So just want to give you that heads up. Just some names I was pretty much watching that I'll go through very quickly here. One was Roblox. I was watching Roblox. They also do have earnings this week. It's actually tomorrow after hours. So I'm gonna look to see if we get a little bit of a run up tomorrow on Roblox. I know that premium is gonna be a little juice tomorrow as well, but it may be a nice little scalp opportunity tomorrow. So I'll keep an eye on this one going into tomorrow. So this one I'll probably be looking for calls on this one in terms of my levels that I'll be watching for. I'm gonna watch for a move. I do have a pivot set at 68.98, and then first resistance I have is 71.16. So I'll be in calls over 68.98 and then targeting 71.16. And then the top of my zone here would be right up towards 71.84. Now, I would ideally hope that we get the entire push right up towards the resistance here, and which that'll push us right up towards wick fill here of 73.35. And that'll be a beautiful scalp tomorrow. We're going right into the earnings. Of course, I'm not holding through the earnings. It will just be a beautiful little day trade tomorrow in which I'll be watching Roblox for the nice little scalp off of this rising wedge. It looks like it hit support pretty nicely. We've been bouncing and holding so far. So I'm going to look for that nice little run up right into that resistance and we'll get a nice push there. All right. Let me actually just draw an arrow. And that's pretty much what I'm looking at right there going into tomorrow. All right. So that's one that I'll keep an eye on. The other one was Amazon. I'm going to see if there's any kind of continuation off of Amazon from today's really large move. I think the high of the day was up about $100 today. Before we had a nice little wedge that was pretty much the end of January. Now it's looking a little bit more like a little megaphone type action. So I do want to see if we end up holding today's lows, if we get any kind of continuation off of this one. And I'll be looking at this one. Hopefully tech does hold up. And that's really the big if, obviously. But looking to see if we cross the 9-day moving average yet again, right over 31.11 will be that level I'm watching to cross the 9-day moving average, and then targeting a high of 3168.97 will be my overall target in which I'm watching for. So that's one that I'll be looking for as well. I know that if you also heard, Sig actually is looking. She had a lotto on Apple. So I think in general we're hoping for some kind of push up in the tech sector in general. So that's just something to just keep in mind in a bigger picture. The other one was Tesla, which everyone knows I'm usually always watching Tesla. But right here, you actually saw that we pretty much broke down from an ascending triangle. I'm going to look to see if we get the next leg up in which we get towards the pretty much the support that we broke down. It will now act as resistance. And that's what I'll be looking for that next leg higher. I definitely thought it was going to go much higher today. My mental target was 910 though. That was pretty much the resistance that I was watching for. And so I'm going to look to see if we get that move right back over 900. The high we wanted to see was over 898.88 was the high I wanted to see us break. We also do have the 9-day moving average sitting at 902, so that's pretty much been a big level for quite some time. And then next resistance will be 921.66. So above the 921.66, then we'll be updating that on live pretty much as we see it happening. But other than that, if we don't get the move back up, then we're pretty much gonna end up doing the gap fill down to below. As you see, we pretty much entered the gap. We made it about 3/4 of the way of the gap, and we got that solid bounce. But if we end up fading tomorrow, then we'll see this one get right down to the end of the gap fill here, 847.27. And then below that, I'm potentially watching towards 830.20 will be my next target, my next pivot that I'm watching. So 830.20, and then also I do have one sitting all the way down towards 808.42 will be the next one. So just some levels we'll be watching there. Of course, that'll all be updated depending upon what futures give us and how it is during pre-market. All right. Appreciate that, Sid. I think I actually do have Mastercard here. There might have been a different setup that I'm probably watching, but I'm about to get to that chart just shortly. The other one was watching the video. Watching the video, I pretty much saw that little rising wedge action, which we broke down. You heard Sig pretty much talking about AMD, in which it actually did look better today than Nvidia, although Nvidia does have earnings coming up, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Maybe it might end up being a one-day wonder, and today was just more so of a consolidation type of day. I did expect it to be a little more active this morning, but they do have earnings also on the 16th, so the day after tomorrow, after hours, they are going to see earnings. What I would anticipate here is that we'll get a retest to test prior support as resistance now, and so we'll end up getting close enough to about 255, and that's if the market wants to cooperate, right? We're not going to get that retest if the market does not start to push. Otherwise, we're going to continue to break down. And if you also notice, this would be pretty much horrible for it, is if it actually ended up filling this gap before their earnings. So I would anticipate that we end up getting a push to the upside. We'll retest that prior support as resistance that we broke down on the rising wedge. And then overall, pretty much my target here, let me see what my resistance that I had noted here. 248.56 is where we're going to end up crossing the 9-day moving average. Above the 248.56, then I'm watching for 254.19, which will put you right close enough into that resistance point here. All right. So those are the two major levels that I'm watching for entry and then for target. All right. Next, the last one I had pretty much highlighted was this little falling wedge action on Mastercard. So I think I actually had the falling wedge before, and that was when I had a few days ago on the watch list that Sig actually particularly liked, but it seems like it's presenting another falling wedge as well, or it's like pretty much expanded this falling wedge. And that's what I'll be watching to see if there's any way I can capitalize on this one. If we get a nice little break to the upside, I'll pretty much be there to get a nice little move on the upside. I know that MasterCard also moves very nicely in terms of premium and fluidity. So I do like that how the contracts usually move as well. We'll be pretty much breaking over 9-day moving average here on over 377.81 is going to be that level. We're going to hit some resistance just about a dollar higher, 378.71. I do have a resistance point right there. And then above that, 383.27 is my first PT. One thing to keep in mind is that we also did have this little gap fill here in which we pretty much filled it maybe within just pennies we're shy about it. So we'll complete that gap fill 380.96. But what's actually more interesting to me and which pretty much aligns over my first PT, over 383.27, I think it's going to go a little bit more crazy and we'll see this gap fill at the top here get pretty much completed and that'll be finished at 388.97. So I do like MasterCard. I think that's usually one that's always one of my favorites in terms of the financials. I prefer MasterCard over like Visa or American Express. So I'll keep an eye on that one outside of the tech sector as well. But I think those are the names that are pretty much just standing out to me right now. All eyes are pretty much on SPY and tech in general with the big cap tech names. And we'll see how those perform tomorrow morning. All right. Keith, do you want me to take a look at Roku? I'll take a look at Roku real quick. Let's see what Roku has. Mm, what is Roku doing here? I do see that's a very defined falling wedge action you have going on there. I will say that. Very defined. Roku's just one that I feel like it's just never ending. Every pop for me just seems to get shorted. In which I'm pretty. If I were to buy, this would be the ideal risk on spot. In which I would say that, and which, if I were to have a stop loss, it would pretty much be towards the end, towards the gap fill. If you're gonna test gap fill, that would be your stop loss. So this would be my risk on spot in which you see you have a defined support point. It's hit multiple times, and you would expect this. I think this is one of like maybe six favorite types of patterns in which is a falling wedge, but you're buying towards the support, not towards the resistance. So as you see, it's pretty much hit this support levels multiple times. You would pretty much buy in your risk here. It's right around 158.84 that you'd be risking on towards that support level, and my stop loss would be set towards the test of the gap fill, and that's at 157.45. Because if you do end up completing the gap fill, then it's going to be pretty much more costly in terms of your stop loss. Otherwise, if you did want to play it a little bit more safer, maybe wait to see if it ends up testing the gap fill before you take your entry off the support level. All right, that may be end up something that I would probably say as well is maybe wait to see if you end up crossing towards the test of the gap fill and support of the falling wedge, in which you'll take that risk on at right here at 157.45. That would likely be your entry. All right. So that's what I would potentially end up telling you. And then of course you see the very big point that you have to get over here would be over 167 half is the level that you definitely want to break over. And you do have a little bit of resistance sitting right around 171 half. All right. So I do like that one in particular though, but I think my risk on point, my entry point will be right towards the test of the gap fill. All right. Let's see what else. VXX. You want me to look at VXX? Are you serious, KMP? That's funny. I will say that. That I did not expect that taken, but VXX definitely has to be more one of the most scariest ones to look at. I think today's price action literally just whipped the upside and the downside. Pretty much early on, I was watching this little falling wedge action. That's literally what caught my attention in terms of this little wedge right here, and that's when I was like, all right, it's either we're gonna end up breaking down on this ascending triangle, or we're gonna get a pop. I think that pop right here, as you see this massive candle, was that point of where SPY literally jumped about a point and a half within just about a candle or two, and you heard Dapper pretty much going off. But overall, I'm seeing the nice little ascending triangle. We see we broke the upside, but also the downside. So what this is pretty much telling me is that this is very much just a chop zone. It continues to expand the formation right now. So I would say that pretty much my support that was sitting up here is now gone here in terms of maybe a pattern, but there's nothing here. VXX is more so patterns don't usually typically only work intraday. So that's something in which it's very hard to trade it on a larger time frame. But if I'm looking at it in terms of where I wanted to see it pretty much break down, I wanted to see it break under 23.24. We tried to hold under there. We just couldn't pretty much hold under. In which if I highlight under that zone, 23.24, that's the zone that I wanted to see us break under and pretty much get what we would say VIX crush. We didn't get that VIX crush. And so that was my concern right now is that it's still holding up rather better than I expected. And that's what gives me pause of concern, especially with the overall market going into tomorrow. But going to the fact that if we do get a break under that 23.24, I want to see us flush under 23.01. That's the big level I want to see us crush under, in which under that 23.01, that'll give us room towards the downside of 22.61, and then potentially we can end up seeing her retrace down towards 22.20. And that would give us room for the broader market, SPY, tech, everyone to pretty much run. Otherwise, that's not going to be very good looking if that ends up just continuing to move. All right. Cover test a few minutes ago. Always like that. I think you were bullish on it, so I'm with you on that one. I think it was pretty much just around the same goal on that. I think we were both watching Tesla for most part. I believe that's actually the only ticker I traded. I literally took the ride up, and then I took the ride down. The only problem that I had was that was not expecting that kind of flush, and I did sell early. But I can't complain. When you close in for profits, you close in for profits. We're not here to pretty much time the bottom and time the top as always. The goal is to pretty much close in profits, right? But that was definitely a beautiful one that I was watching today was Tesla. I think the price action just felt very predictable from the get-go. I was expecting the bounce. We got the beautiful bounce. And then given the fact that VXX was holding up, market was just so choppy and we expected a little more downside with pretty much indicators not even reacting to the little rising wedge action we had for most of the day. I expected the retracement. I just did not expect it in that fashion and that rapid. All right. But other than that, I think those were the names that I was pretty much watching again. I'll be charting a little bit later on tonight. We'll see if there's anything else that stands out to me. We'll be watching futures. I'm hoping there's a better trend tomorrow. I think that's pretty much what a lot of the other traders on live would pretty much agree sig as well. You want a better trend day, and that's what leaves us a little bit pause to concern right now in terms of where are we going into tomorrow and pretty much keeping it light overnight. All right. Yeah, who could have guessed? I mean, it had strong relative strength. I think that was the thing that Sig actually pointed out on live as well, was that he pretty much recognized that the relative strength was between Netflix and Tesla. Once we saw Tesla and Netflix start to regress, I think the only other name that showed strength was Amazon, and that one actually popped pretty quickly, and I think that went flew under the radar. It went from, I believe, red early on in the morning to about up $100. But once again, once we saw Netflix and Tesla pretty much rug pull, and we had already seen Microsoft and Apple already weak, that tells you pretty much where the market in terms were. It's just there was no momentum at all. Once we saw those two names pull back, it's all right. Where are you gonna get that next leg higher in terms of holding the market up? We tried to see Apple and Microsoft go green. It's just that they were very vain in terms of being just range bound to flat. All right. But I think that pretty much, yeah, pray for a trend. That's exactly what I'm praying for tonight. Sig. That's exactly why I'm pretty much just cash tonight. I just want to see a better direction tomorrow. It's just that we also have so many things going on this week, so many different comments, news alerts, speakers, and just put the icing on the cake with OPEX. Yeah, it's just a lot going on this week. So definitely pretty much just keep it small. That's what I will probably say, and then keep it light overnight. That's pretty much will likely be my message here every day. All right. But I think that probably concludes the daily, watch list here tonight. Again, I'll see what I end up finding when I chart later on tonight, and I'll post those on my Twitter, so you guys can go check that out. Maybe I'll drop it in premium ideas as well in the Discord, and you guys can see maybe what charts I'm looking at later on tonight. All right. But I think that probably concludes today's session, guys. So I will see you guys tomorrow on live, and that'll be a wrap for today. All right. You guys have a good afternoon, and again, see you guys in the morning. Sig, I'll see you later.